Welcome to the second video on the fifth meditation. In this video, I'm going to discuss what Descartes calls, or what's sort of known as the truth rule, or what Descartes says is the route to perfect knowledge, and the sort of the most famous objection to Descartes' philosophy, what gets called the Cartesian circle. So, by the beginning of the fifth meditation, I have a criterion or a standard by which I can distinguish what's true from what might be false. And I get that in meditation 3, at the beginning of meditation 3, right? We've already talked about it in a way. So my judgment will only certainly be true if I restrict my affirmations to what I clearly and distinctly perceive. There's no definition of clear and distinct perception, but Descartes does give paradigmatic examples. 2 + 3 = 5, the square has 4 sides, I am, I exist, I am a thinking thing, the nature of wax is extended, God exists, God is not a deceiver. These things are all true by the natural light, which we've also already looked at, right? In a way, they're obvious, they're self-evident, you just get it, right? But notice, while some of these are really obvious, once you've understood them, like I am, I exist, or 2 + 3 = 5, Descartes says, however, at paragraph 12, on page 68, not all of these things are immediately self-evident, right? So this is a quote, some of the things I clearly and distinctly perceive are obvious to everyone, while others are discovered only by those who look more closely and investigate more carefully. That is, some obvious, evident, clear and distinct things aren't immediately self-evident. Rather, it takes work to see them. But once their proof is complete, they're just as evident, right? So an example might be a proof in geometry. Say the side angle side theorem, right? That might be an example of something that's not immediately self-evident, but once you see it, it's like, oh yeah, okay, that's just as evident, right? Another example of a proof like this that's not maybe immediately self-evident, but is evident once you see the proof, is the proof for God's existence. So this whole truth rule, right? That clear and distinct perceptions are true. The thought behind it is that if the notion of truth made no sense to you, then you could have never started meditating. The truths of metaphysics are what, in meditating, we've discovered make this notion intelligible. It's what God provides. It's God that provides the standard of truth, right? So you have an idea of truth that's already there when you get going in meditating, right? You have an idea of what you're lacking, right? And what perfect knowledge of truth consists in. You just don't understand what it is yet. And in meditating, you come to see what your idea of truth is, right? So remember, the idea of truth was one of the examples of something that you had an innate idea of back when we were looking at the innate ideas. And so it has to be there, it has to be in you, this idea of truth, of what it is that we perceive clearly and distinctly and that cannot be false. And that idea of truth is something that God has to have put in you as the standard of truth that has to be there in order for you to get going in meditating. So it's our knowledge of God and that he isn't a deceiver, which ensures that when we're impelled to judge because of clear and distinct perception, that we're judging correctly. So we have a sure criterion to tell what's true, and the skeptic is refuted, right? Now that we have this truth rule. Objection, right? No, says the objector, says the proponent of the Cartesian circle. Hold on a minute. In Meditations 1 through 4, you've argued in a circle, Descartes. How so? Well, Descartes, you claim the fact that God exists and is no deceiver establishes the infallible truth of clear and distinct ideas. But you establish the fact that God exists and is no deceiver through your clear and distinct perception. And that's the Cartesian circle. Right? So the idea is, well, you tried to establish, or you claimed that God, the existence of God, shows us that we can trust our clear and distinct perception. Nonetheless, you've argued that God exists through clear and distinct perception, and that's reasoning in a circle, right? If God shows us that we can trust our clear and distinct perception, but it's through our clear and distinct perception that we see that God exists, well, then it seems like we're reasoning in a circle. So Descartes actually responds to this objection, and we see it both in Meditation 5 and in the second replies, which is reprinted in our book on pages 139 to 142. So remember why we started doubting clear and distinct perception. We hypothesized that there was an evil, deceiving God, and now when we consider 2 plus 3 equals 5, it's clear and distinct. And so because it's clear and distinct, we cannot but say it's true, right? We must affirm it. We have no choice. We can only doubt clear and distinct perceptions if we change the subject, if we consider something else, if we are no longer attending to 2 plus 3 equals 5, to the content of 2 plus 3 equals 5. So we can only doubt those clear and distinct perceptions if we change the subject. Right? So if I, for example, consider something else like my own existence or an evil, deceiving creator, right? If instead of paying attention to 2 plus 3 equals 5, I pay attention to my own existence or an evil, deceiving creator, then I can vacillate between certainty and doubt. When I'm not paying attention to what the words mean, to the fact that 2 plus 3 equals 5, when I just say the words 2 plus 3 equals 5, right? Well, then I might wonder, wow, does 2 plus 3 really equal 5? Right? If I'm not actually thinking about it, then I can vacillate between certainty and doubt. But notice, the only way that I can put my clear and distinct perceptions into doubt is by turning away from them. It's by turning away from them. That's how I can vacillate. But once done with Meditation 3, once I've had the proof in mind and gone on to see that God is a perfect being and that any perfect being exists, once I've understood that proof and had it in mind, then I've seen that there's no evil, deceiving God, right? So once in Meditation 3, I've seen that there's no evil, deceiving God, well, then there's no longer any reason to doubt what I remember having seen clearly and distinctly, right? So I remember having seen that 2 plus 3 equals 5, and so now I know that 2 plus 3 in fact equals 5, even when I'm not thinking about it, because I remember having perceived it, and I know that there's no evil, deceiving God that's tricked me into believing. And so the standard skeptical move is not available in the third meditation in regards to God. There's no way to doubt God's existence or the proof while you have it in mind, not even through the hypothesis of an evil deceiver. When you've got the proof in mind, you're seeing it clearly and distinctly, and it cannot but be true. And that shows that the hypothesis about the evil deceiving God is incorrect. And we see an allusion to this, right? We see an allusion to this on page 109 at 7015. So there he says, now, however, I have perceived that God exists. I have perceived that God exists, right? And at the same time, I have understood that everything else depends on him and that he is no deceiver. And I have drawn the conclusion that everything which I clearly and distinctly perceive is of necessity true. Accordingly, if I'm no longer attending to the arguments which led me to judge this is true, as long as I remember that I clearly and distinctly perceived it, there are no counter arguments which can be induced to make me doubt it. But on the contrary, I have true and certain knowledge of it. And I have knowledge not just of this matter, but of all matters which I remember ever having demonstrated in geometry and so on. Okay, so I have perfect knowledge through God. Thus, the knowledge I have through God is unassailable. But until I've got clear and distinct knowledge of God, what I have known clearly and distinctly isn't unassailable, right? I might forget it. I might forget how I got it. I might come to doubt it. And so he never appeals to things that we have clearly, distinctly perceived in the past in the proofs of God in the third meditation, right? It's only to things that we're perceiving right now. It's only the things that we're perceiving right now. And so the circle is broken. Right? That's Descartes' response, right? He's only appealing to the things that he's perceiving clearly and distinctly. So he's only appealing to the things that he's perceiving clearly and distinctly. These cannot but be true. And so on the basis of them, he's proving God's existence, right? They have to be true. Still, you might say, not so fast. He does appeal to the natural light. I mean, when something is true by the natural light, it's obvious. You just get it, which is to say that it's like, I understand, I am, I exist. So although there's no appeal to the clarity and distinctness of past perceptions, there is an appeal to self-evidence. Well, of course there is, right? The only conception of truth that we have, the only way that we can make sense of this notion of truth is through self-evidence of the natural light. What this self-evidence amounts to is that when we think such an idea, we cannot help affirm it. At the same time, we think it, we affirm it, right? I mean, as soon as we think it, we affirm it. And this affirmation doesn't happen because of some rule we follow, right? It's not, this doesn't happen. The truth rule isn't external to my recognition. Oops. The truth rule isn't external to my judging, right? No, it's not something that we just follow. We just do it. We can't help it, right? It's more immediate. It's not like I'm saying, oh, what was the rule I was supposed to follow? Oh, it's that one. There's clear and distinct perception, therefore it's true. No, that's not how it works. I'm not, when I have clear and distinct perception and taking it to be true, saying, oh, what's the rule about clear and distinct perceptions? It's that they're true. No, what it is to be a clear and distinct perception is that it must be true, is that I judge it to be true. That's the nature of clear and distinct perception, right? So it's not some rule we follow. Rather, we judge it to be true because we can't help it. It's inherent to the nature of our faculties. It's much more immediate than, the rule I follow where I stop at stop signs or something, right? So that's in a way, the way we should be understanding the truth rule. But you might wonder, what if it was nonetheless false? What if the truth rule was nonetheless false because our natures were made such as to go wrong? That is, what if that whose truth we were so firmly convinced of may appear false to God or an angel, so that it's absolutely speaking false? Well, this is something that Descartes replies to in the second replies. And farther on. So he says, in response, he says, we can neither believe in it, nor have even the smallest suspicion of it, namely the falsity of this, right? That what we're so firmly convinced of, as in the case of clear and distinct perception, that may be false, or is absolutely false. We can't believe it, nor can we even have the smallest suspicion of it. For the suspicion which we're making here is of a conviction so firm that it is quite incapable of being destroyed. And such a conviction is clearly the same as the most perfect certainty. The most perfect. We cannot doubt that clear and distinct perception is true. Why? Well, think back to how we saw I am, I exist. It has to be true. No doubt whatever could bring it down. The strongest form of doubt just served to show I am, I exist. And every clear and distinct perception is like this, while we're seeing it clearly and distinctly, right? As long as we're focused on 2 + 3 = 5, we cannot doubt it. As long as we understand that fact, we cannot but judge it to be true. So although it's admittedly more complex, if we properly understood the proof of God's existence, according to Descartes, and perceived the proof all at once, clearly and distinctly, then no doubt is possible. There's no room for any doubt about an evil, deceiving creator creeping in. And if it does, then we've gotten distracted or haven't really understood the proof, right? What it is to understand the proof is to perceive it clearly and distinctly and to see that it cannot but be true, according to Descartes. So, but once we do understand the proof, we can be sure that the things that we've seen clearly and distinctly in the past are true. And so they won't fall into doubt as soon as we're no longer attending to them. And so here, let me clear this and move down. And so because we can trust our memories and what we've once seen to be clearly and perceived distinctly certain, right? We can now trust all of the truths of mathematics that we once proved true, right? So we can trust our memories of clear and distinct perceptions. And because we can trust things that we once clearly and distinctly perceived, not what we're merely clearly distinctly perceiving right now, all of a sudden, much more knowledge is possible, right? We don't have to, in order to have knowledge, we don't just have to be paying attention to it right now. Rather, all of the things that we once clearly and distinctly perceived, we can be sure of. And so now we can have a whole system of knowledge, right? We can trust our clear and distinct memories because there's no evil, deceiving God. And so, because we can trust all the things that we once clearly and distinctly perceived, and those are going to hold even if we're dreaming. So the things that we're going to maybe have seen in geometry in the past, and those are going to hold even if we're dreaming, now we can trust the truths of mathematics. And we're going to start being able to build a science that's more than just the brick we're paying attention to at the moment, right? It's more than just the brick I am, I exist, or that God exists. right? Now we can see, well, everything that we once saw was clear and distinct. And so the proofs of geometry can get into the picture. And that's going to let us start building a whole system of knowledge, a whole system of past knowledge, even those things that we're not now presently sensing and remembering. And that's going to how we begin down the path of a science. So that's a big deal. That's a big deal. And that's because the only way to doubt these truths that we remember was by supposing that there was an evil creator, but that's now been refuted.